Welcome back to Mark 5, Part 2. I'm at verse 21. Each of these episodes around the Erie Lake are introduced by really eistoparan, which doesn't really mean to the other side. It just means to shore, a different place. I mean, we can say that the last scene, Gerasa or Gadara, or whatever you call it, I mean, it does have a location definitely on the east of on the east of Sea of Galilee, and Decapolis is mentioned, and there are lots of reasons to think of it as Greco-Roman settlement. There's a massive pig farm there. I mean, but I'm not in the business of historicism, and for me, eistoparan just means another stop. But there, in my view, there is no real geography to these stories. But that's enough from me. Kaidia perasantos to Yesu, and when Jesus had crossed over in the boat, again, Parlin, eistoparan to the other side, Sunek there came together, Oklos Polus, a big crowd, to him, and they were by the sea. Eketai, and there comes Haste ton Archisunagogon, one of the leaders of the synagogue, Archer leader, and some leaders of the synagogue, by name Jairus, and seeing him, Pipte, he falls at his feet. Yes, we see this word a lot in this chapter, parakaleo, to implore, especially with the adverb pola. And he implored him earnestly, saying, Tochthigatrion mu, my little daughter, eskato zeke, I think is at the point of death. Yes, lastly, final, she's at her extremity. And he asked, we need to go back to parakale, he entreats him, Hina, that he might come and epithes taskeras, and lay his hands on her, in order that she might be saved and lived. This word, all of these words need to be taken, they can have many shades of meaning, and probably all of them are intended. Saved, made well, and live. And he went away with him, with Jairus. And Oklus Polus, a great crowd follows him, and Sunith Libon out on, thronged around him, pressed against him, Thlibo. Yes. That's, yeah. Okay, this sentence, Kaigune use. There is no main verb until right at the end. So, okay, these are participles, yeah. And being a woman, en hruse hymatos, with a hrusis, a rushing or flow of blood for 12 years. This is what we call the Markian sandwich. So we've introduced Jairus' daughter who's on the point of death, and then we're being told about this woman. There was a woman with a flow of blood 12 years, and Polapathusa, who had suffered much from under many doctors, and Dapanesasa, and having spent ta parautes panta, everything that she had, I think, and Merden Ophelesa, and having benefited nothing, but rather Alamalon Eistokeiron Elthusa, having come into a worse situation. Having heard Akusasa about Jesus, and having come in the crowd, entoi okloi, opis then behind him, hepsato, she touched, this is the main verb, she touched his garment. Hepto. That's not right. That's not right. It definitely means touch. Yes, okay. She touched his garment. I've never seen a sentence quite like this. Although it's 4 verses, it's only one sentence. And if we were making a mini-series, we would devote at least 40 minutes to describing her backstory. We've got a backstory and her recent backstory, how she came to be here right at this moment. It's common in Greek to, Latin loves to use main verbs and subordinate verbs with persons. Greek loves to use participles and keep the main verbs to the minimum. And you can see this in literally any sentence here in Mark. But I've never seen a sentence quite like this. All of these participles tell a story building up to the moment at which the main verb happens. So we've got ousa, being a woman, polypathusa, having suffered, dapanesasa, and having spent, and having meden, ophiletheisa, that's a yes, an aorist passive, having nothing benefited, but having come, elthusa, into worse, and then having heard, akousasa, about Jesus, and elthusa, and having come in the crowd, hepsato, she touched. There are 7 participles building up her story before she gets to be the subject of this sentence, hepsato. I've never seen anything quite like that, but you're welcome to tell me if you can see something with more participles building up to a more nominative participles building up to a main verb. Anyway, 4, she said, if hapsomai, if I touch, that's kai ean, even his garments, hemation, so thesamai, I will be saved, I will be made well. And immediately, euthus, exeranther, it was dried up, her pergetu hymatos, the spring or the flow of blood, dried up. And egno, she experienced, or she felt, in her body, that she was healed. Iatai, she is healed from her affliction, mastix. We see this word a lot from her affliction, but this word, strangely, we've never seen in Mark before, and this is the only place it occurs. The word that means healed. And at once, Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out of him, epistraphes, having turned around. I don't think we've seen this verb used exactly like that before, literally turned around in the crowd, he said, who touched my garments? And the disciples were saying to him, you see the crowd, again, sunt libonta, thronging around you, and you say, who touched me? All the stuff that's going on, and all of the people milling around and perhaps touching him, this one thing, this event, which the woman knows about, and Jesus instantly knows about, and will have escaped anyone else's noticed. Who touched me? Kai peria eblepetor, and he looked around to see who did it. Yeah. But the woman, fearing and trembling, we sometimes get this combination, I think, in Mark, fear and trembling. Fearing, again, we've got the participles, phobesa, tremusa, eiduia, knowing what had happened to her, she came, verb, and fell at his feet, verb, and said to him the whole truth. And he said to her, Thugate, daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be hugies from your affliction. Be healed from tes mastikosu, from your affliction. Again, we see mastics a lot, but this is the only place in Mark where hugies occurs, and it often means well or healed. It's perhaps the most common word you would use for that. But Mark only uses it here, just saying. And Thugate, daughter, of course, you will have noticed that there are two daughters in this story who are closely linked. Yes, and now we're back to the second piece of bread in the Markian sandwich. Eti autou lalontos, while he was still speaking. Okay. Kontai apotou archisunagogu. There come people from the, presumably Jairus is standing there, but from the ruler's house, perhaps, saying, your daughter has died. I mean, I'm just assuming that Jairus has remained with Jesus, and that must mean from his household, because the message comes, I assume, to Jairus, your daughter has died. Yes, they're talking to Jairus, aren't they? Your daughter has died. Why do you any longer trouble the teacher? Skules. Why do you trouble the teacher further? But Jesus, overhearing, that's a good translation of para-akusas, standing by the side of somebody and hearing something. Overhearing the word spoken, he says to the synagogue ruler, do not be afraid, mer phobu, monon pistua, only believe. Right. And he did not allow eferken, anyone with him. He did not allow anyone with him to follow with him. Amer, except for Peter and James and John, the brother of James. Interesting. I mean, we have these kind of circles around Jesus. There are all the people who follow him, and then there are the disciples and others, and then there are the disciples, and then there are these three, this inner core. And they come to the house of the synagogue ruler, and he sees a throng, thorubos, a different word than the ones we've seen for multitude, crowd. A throng, I think, because people are milling around. It's more than just a crowd, it's a commotion. And he sees a commotion and people weeping and alalas dontas, ululating, wailing much. And having entered, he says to them, why thorubase there are you making a commotion and weeping? Torpaidion, the child, is not dead, ukapathanen, ala kathude, but is sleeping. And they laughed at him. Okay. Katakala now too. But he, this is interesting, this is ekbalo, a very common word which is used for lots and lots of reasons in Mark. But to throw out, he cast out, Surprisingly, in this chapter, the only place it's used is here. It's not used of the demons where you'd expect it, but he puts out all the people. Okay, having thrown out all the other people, paralambane, he took the father of the child and the mother and those with him, and he enters to where the child was. And we've seen this before, kratesas tes keros, having taken her by the hand, having taken the hand of the child, he says to her, Talitha cum, which, when interpreted, methermeneuomenon, hermeneutics, Hermes, yes, which when interpreted means, tokoration, little girl, I say to you, egeire, arise. Another translation I like is wake up. We often see this with egeiro. It can mean wake up. There's sleeping and waking up and living and being saved, and all of these things seem to have a kind of eschatological meaning at the same time. So he might say, I don't want to choose, but I might translate this, wake up, little girl, I say to you, wake up. And koration definitely implies a girl. You notice that this girl is referred to 3 times as thagatrion, paideon and koration. All of these words are neuter, and that's not unusual in Greek. Teknon, of course, is also neuter, and paideon is very common. But I'm just flagging it up. Incidentally, the actual Aramaic or Hebrew Talitha, it actually strictly doesn't mean little girl, but little lamb. Little lamb, awake. And immediately she stood up, the little girl, and walked around. For she was 12 years old. I don't know what that gar is doing there. Why 4 is explanatory. But it's important, clearly, that it's here. For she was 12 years old. Okay. So, at once she stood up and walks around. And everyone was amazed with a great amazement. Again, very Markian. Existemi. He's out of his mind. Or, yeah, here everyone was amazed. Overcome. And diastelator, and he gave orders to them, again, pola, earnestly, let's say, or a lot of times, he strictly ordered them, in order that no one might know this. And he said to be given to her to eat. Yeah, he said, give her something to eat. You know what? I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm going to stop there.